So the plan today is going to be to change out the thermostat and some gaskets on the 3rd gen Prelude. The thing is, I've been looking on the YouTubes and the forums to try and find a write-up on how to do it on the B20A3, which is a 3rd gen Prelude with the dual carb motor, the bastard engine if you will. And lo and behold, there's really no content out there on how to do this. So we're just going to jump under the hood together and see if we can figure it out. I don't think it'll be too complicated. Hopefully I ordered the right parts. Let's jump under it. Underneath the hood of the Prelude, I'm going to show you guys the thermostat is, I'm hoping, right inside this housing here. But I do have an O-ring that I want to replace that basically I need to disconnect this entire housing for the coolant right here. So I'm going to start probably by draining out some coolant, and then we're going to take off this upper radiator hose, and we're just going to work our way towards the motor from this side and see what we need to take off to get the gasket replaced. I got to thinking about this. I don't have enough room underneath the front lip or front bumper to get a tray underneath to catch the coolant. So I'm thinking, because I need to only really bleed this top portion here, I'm gonna put a jack underneath the back of the Prelude, lift the back end up so that way the nose is pointed down. And then I'm just gonna take a turkey baster and start pulling the coolant out of here. I don't need to bleed a whole bunch, or I don't need to take out a whole bunch. So I think a couple minutes of just turkey baster will probably get me out enough coolant. That way this will be bled, and because the angle of the Prelude is going to be pointing downwards this way, it should hopefully empty out what's in this coolant housing right there. I've removed probably a half a gallon of coolant out of this top portion here, so it should be ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and take off the upper radiator hose, put a towel underneath because I'm sure I'm still gonna make a mess, and then we'll sort out what needs to come off first as far as bolts. Upper radiator hose is off. Not too much coolant came out, so my little plan there with the turkey baster worked out nicely. I think I am going to go ahead and remove the entire housing up to about there. There's a seam back there. And to do that, I need to unplug all this stuff, take like these ground wires off with that bolt, remove this brass hose here with that bolt, and then I got to take all these little vacuum lines off the thermo valve, which is already busted. I mean, look at this. Look at this. It's already broken. So I'm gonna try and not break any more and get as much of these components off of the housing as possible, so that way all we have to do is unbolt it, clean it up, new gasket, put it back on. After messing with this for quite some time, I finally got the 2 bolts that hold the housing to the motor. So you can see it's loose now. The one that was really hard to get to, there's a nut right next to this white insulated pipe here. That was really hard to get to. The rest of it was pretty easy. There's just one other bolt on top. So now I should be able to pull this whole housing out. Finally got the thermostat housing off, and I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up with a wire brush and some all-purpose cleaner, and remove like that old gasket right there, and just do my best to clean this thing up because it's looking 30 years old. So I'm gonna clean this up, and then we'll replace the gaskets, the thermostat and all that, and put it back in. Here's how the housing came out. I hit it with a wire brush a bunch, made sure I got all of these surfaces as clean as I possibly can, especially the ones where gaskets go in. And speaking of gaskets, here's what I'm working with, a new housing gasket, which is gonna go probably right in there. This one I'm not even sure if I need to use, because when I took the old one, when I took this thing out, it didn't have one. There was never a gasket in between the thermostat housing here and whatever this part of the housing is called. And then I've also got a new thermostat with a new gasket on it. And this is a, I believe, 192 degree thermostat. Thermostat, it only goes in one way. You've got these two little dimples up top, and those are gonna line up with the two dimples on your thermostat housing. So it should sit pretty nicely right in there. Now that I've cleaned everything up, I'm gonna go ahead and try and put this back in, which means I need to reattach this hose that goes onto the thermostat housing. Now the fun part of getting this back into position, which should go something like this. But at the same time, I need to make sure this D-shaped gasket here stays in there when I go to reinsert this back on. I think a little bit of Permatex, just a dab, to keep this gasket in place would be the ticket. So I'm gonna try and thread this back on, which this guy has to sit over it like that. And this one goes up top. And then now the fun one for the bottom. I'll catch up with you guys when I get this bottom nut on. I've got the thermostat all put back on in the housing. I've bolted it down to the motor. I still need to tighten down the thermostat housing bolts here. I need to reattach the upper radiator hose. And then I think we're just gonna bleed the coolant, put back the coolant that we took out, take the jack out of the rear, and just bleed the whole system and see if we get up to operating temp now. Because before the Prelude, I had a feeling the old thermostat was stuck open, so it was never building enough temperature or pressure to get up to operating temperature. So I've put in all of the coolant back into the Prelude, and next I need to turn the car on and let it bleed out all the air that I've added into the system by doing the thermostat change, and hopefully now the Prelude will get up to operating temp. After the Prelude's been idling for about 10 to 15 minutes, this is the operating temp that I can get it to. This is the max I really ever see it get to. I feel like when I bought this car, it would sit right in the middle, dead center every time, and now it sits just below there, and I don't really know if it was broken before and now it's working properly, or if it's never really getting up to operating temp. The other thing I'm missing is my hot air pipe, if you will, which I can point out under the hood. So I'll jump out there and show you guys real quick. So on the carbureted Preludes, you normally have a pipe coming off your exhaust manifold here, and it chases all the way back, and then it goes right up on that port there on the air intake. And I've since deleted that, mainly because mine was just falling apart and I couldn't find something that would replace it. I've found hot air hoses, but none of them are either long enough for the right diameter. So I'll have to keep looking, and I'm wondering if, basically what that's designed to do is warm up the Prelude faster in colder temperatures, especially, so it recirculates the hot exhaust heat and puts it back into the air intake. So I'm wondering if that key component there might be the reason why I'm just sitting right underneath operating temperature all the time. If you guys know any parts or part numbers that would work for that, a new hot air pipe, I would say diameter is about 1 inch on both sides. If you get 3/4 inch, that might even work too. So if you have an idea or something that I can use to replace that OEM hot air pipe that goes from there to there, that would be excellent. Otherwise, I'll keep searching on the interweb, and that's it. Thank you guys as always for watching these videos. I do appreciate it. And we just hit 14,000 subscribers, which is something very special. So I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up. Comments below if you have a part recommendation for that hot air hose, or if you just have something to say about the video. Outside of that, subscribe if you're new. Enjoy the videos. I'll see you next time. Adios.